And for today's video, let's troubleshoot the Anycubic Kobra S1. Now, before we go ahead, can you hit that like and sub? So what we usually do is home the Kobra S1. This is so that we can easily access the hot end and extruder side. If you're having problems with nozzle clogs, extruder feeding issues, this is your troubleshooting guide. Especially in the Facebook groups, there's a lot of people having issues with their hot end. So this is a good place to start. And if you're highly unsure of what you're doing with the printer, you can follow along. So for this one, we moved our Z-axis 100 millimeters. And in this case, I already removed the front cover, so don't make that mistake. Make sure that the front cover is still on there. And if ever you did have the front housing removed, just make sure to hit the limit switch, which I'll be showing you in this shot right there. Right around there. After it homes and after moving it 100 millimeters on the Z-axis, you need to turn off your printer. This is so that we don't short anything when we disconnect and connect some cable pins. And in this case, we do remove the housing cover. You need to be extra careful with this one because I actually broke one of the pins on the housing side on the back side. So be careful with that. Remove that cable connector right there. And on a side note, there's a lot of Kobra S1 users right now. So I think making this video should help a bunch of you. And now we have access, so this is actually good for us. And we should be able to disassemble. Oh yeah, hit that like and sub, please, thank you. So in disassembling, you do need to pull up the lock mechanism right there. And it's actually hard to access this part because there's a latch and you need to pull the wires to the left to remove the plastic clip. And the white connector, you do need to pinch the middle part so that you can safely remove the connector. So in this shot, you can see me struggling a bit with the wires and connectors, and eventually they will be removed right there. And as you can see some filament right there. So after the cutting module has cut off the filament, there will be bits of it still on the nozzle. This is normal, especially if you're into multicolor printing. And one of the most important things with this one is the ceramic fitting. It needs to be completely flush with the metal, and if it's not, you need to adjust and make it fit. So if you're having clogs, now's the best time to clean it off. And so we'll start with disassembling the extruder. But before we do, we will be removing the filament cutter first. So there's 3 screws, which I pointed out, and one of them is actually hiding under the wire, so be careful with that. And just be mindful of the PCBs because there's a lot of sensors in here. There's a pressure sensor, filament cutting, and filament sensor. So be careful with the wires and PCBs. You may damage something here. And I'm trying to be careful with removing the cutter there. So just assist it a bit, and voila, filament cutter. And make sure you keep these little things, okay? So now to the next one, we're trying to remove the blue clip there where the PTFE tube leads onto the extruder side. Remove that. And it's a bit difficult to remove the PTFE tube. You can see me struggle here. And as long as you have constant pressure putting down on the black clip, you can remove the PTFE tube. Just be careful, you might break something there. And again, there's 3 screws, which I'm pointing out right there. And one of them is hiding under the wires. I don't know why the other screw is under wires again. We then proceed to unscrewing the screws. Now, the moment we do remove all 3 screws, a lot of things can go wrong. So underneath that extruder, there's a filament sensor. There's a little spring, which a lot of you may have lost during this assembly. Following the Anycubic wiki, they only show photos of these disassembly guides, but not really how it's done in actual video. So be careful with the filament sensor, both the module and the trigger mechanism. And there's also the gear tensioner, so be mindful of that one too. Pretty much if you have a small container where you can put all the parts, please do so. We will then proceed with removing the gear, and you can actually see me playing around with releasing the tension. So you release the tension and then remove the piece right there. So the moment we do release the pressure sensor, we will have access to the extruder side. And right now I'm showing you the extruder, the heat sink, and the pressure sensor. So the pressure sensor is actually pretty cool. It's a load cell mounted onto the heat sink, and it latches into the lock mechanism for the actual hot end. So again, 3 screws basically, and we remove those 3. And at this point, I'm trying to open up the extruder housing. This is where the little spring, filament sensor, and mechanism located. So in this case, the filament trigger did fall off. I had to look for it after this shot right here. And here's the black clip. Don't forget to put this back. And here are the parts inside the extruder housing and hot end. So a bunch of screws. That's the black pendulum looking piece for the trigger filament sensor. And if you guys followed along, the extruder and hot end would look like this. So there's also another spring. This is where you control the filament tension or extruder tension. On the other piece, this is the other half of the extruder housing. Now we have the pressure sensor with the lock mechanism and heat sink. So it's conveniently located there. And a bunch of other stuff. So if you wanted to access the PCB side of things, you need to remove those screws and 2 more at the side over there. Only if you wanted to replace the PCB or do something with the electronics or wiring. And there I removed the filament sensor, slowly reassembling the little piece we had to for the filament trigger. So it's actually very hard to put this on, especially if you have shaky hands. You do need a pair of tweezers. So there's 2 little holes over there, one for the spring and one for the housing itself. And what I do here on the next one is I squeeze in the PCB at an angle pointing downwards, but I can squeeze in. And then once I put that in, now you have to be careful with this one, because if the spring flies off, it's over. And I press it down, make sure that it's in place. And from here, I just find the other cover, sandwich the pieces together, and you have to make sure everything's aligned here. And once everything is aligned, you can screw it into place and adjust the extruder tension. So very important things. We're already at the reassembling process. This is assuming you guys have done all of the troubleshooting needed. If there's a clog, if there's a filament gunk stuck in the extruder side or on the hot end side of things, And I'm just showing you guys how to reassemble everything so that we have like a more seamless process with reassembly. So when putting things back up, we start with the pressure sensor. So remember the 3 screws you used and make sure the wiring isn't as of a complete fiasco. So just cable manage a bit there and screw it in just a little bit until all 3 screws are aligned properly. And once that is done, we insert the gear, extruder gear to be exact. So be careful in this regard because we've actually disassembled the extruder again and readjusted the alignment for the extruder gear. Now, to save you some time, you do need to make sure this alignment is good because that gear over there that I showed you aligns to a bearing which needs to be completely flush to the extruder housing on the mounted piece right there on the rails. And if you are sloppy, this will punish you for sure. So make sure extruder gear and alignment are good, tension's alright, filament pathways completely a-okay, and your reassembly would be 100% okay. And as long as you take your time with reassembling and disassembling, you won't have any problems for sure. At least you already have like a good basis with this video on what mistakes I made and what you can improve on these mistakes. And let's say for example, I didn't cover certain disassembly guide, just let me know in the comment section below so that I can make more relevant content for you guys. And with the Kobra S1, it has been very useful for me to tear this printer down and reassembling everything again because I fully understand how the printer works. So currently, I don't know much of the electronics yet. I haven't even seen what kind of stepper motor it uses, what kind of firmware, that kind of stuff. Maybe on the future videos, but for now, let's start off with disassembling the Hotend and extruder, and then on the next one, which I'll be releasing maybe next week, would be for the Ace Pro. So I'll do a disassembly guide on the Ace Pro. I already have the shots taken, I just need to take the time and edit the piece. So last few screws over there and filament cutter last. On a side note, something I realized with the Kobra S1, it can be daunting to open up the extruder housing and the whole shebang. But once you're used to and more familiar with the pieces, you know where to go. So usually when it comes to troubleshooting the Kobra S1, the main things I look for is if it's a stuck filament inside the Ace Pro, or if it's a filament clog on the Hotend or extruder side of things. Fixing those issues has given me pretty much a very high uptime for my unit. And with my unit actually, it was one of the first batches that released. So I'm not entirely sure what the quality is for the next few batches. There's a whole lot of things that can go wrong. Could be either your logistics, just banging up the printer, which kind of sucks, but when these printers leave the factory, they should be working fine. But I get it. Sometimes you just have a bad quality printer. And you know, it's a different case for me. Mine was working fine, and a few hiccups with like firmware updates, but nothing that would make the printer unusable for me. So for me, it was like a lot of uptime, a lot of like multicolor prints, and mostly just testing out very different materials on the Kobra S1, which, you know, I really appreciate. I love the printer. And it's actually very cool to like see a whole new wave of Kobra S1 users. What I don't like though is there's a lot of like mixed reviews right now on Facebook posts, you know, troubleshooting their units, and you know, oh, this is a very bad printer, and you know, a lot of those stuff, which I get it. It's frustrating to like troubleshoot your printer, but you do need to know how to use a 3D printer. There's no plug and play 3D printer out there that's, I mean, there probably is, but the price point, the price point should be way expensive. And the Kobra S1 kind of reminds me of, it's almost there, but it's not fully. I'm guessing it's around like 70% there, you know, but we'll see. We'll see in the next coming months and years. And for me, I've tried a lot of printers, Bamboo Lab printers, you know, Creality printers, Elegoo, the whole lot. And it really boils down to your user experience, which brand you believe in or you're more confident with, or you know, something you see value in that brand, because these are companies that are fighting off of each other for the market share, you know. And it really depends on us consumers which brand we pick, because obviously whatever brand we choose, that company will grow from that decision alone. So pick a brand that you're really comfortable with, because 3D printing has been growing a whole lot, and you know, it's doubled, quadrupled the user base since 8 years ago. Like it's a whole lot. Sorry, we kind of got sidetracked there. So right now we're at the Hotend assembly. I just made sure that after putting in the wire, we latch it into the connector, put it in the clip, and once that's in, we just pull the lever down and securely tighten it. So you can slightly move it left and right, but up and down it should be pretty tight there. And after the hot end, we tried to prepare the front housing cover. So some final checks over there, making sure that everything's right in place, and also making sure that the printer is turned off. Okay, like you don't want to connect something while the power supply is turned on, so make sure of that. We don't want to like short anything. I've had my fair share of electronics smoking off from just connecting the connectors while the power supply is turned on. And here's the front housing cover. So making sure we connect the fan cable connector first, and making sure that you don't misplace the wire while you're securing the front housing cover. So just make sure the wire is in a good spot. And before we fully close off everything, make sure that the PTFE tube is there, the black clip is secured, the blue clip is also nearby, so that you can insert the PTFE tube to the extruder and then secure it with the blue clip that's provided with the printer. And once all of that is done, you can now finally secure the front housing cover. And we're done. Adjusting the front housing cover. So again, the wire. Be careful with that. Make sure it's in the right place. Just moving everything around, making sure it's not going to be in a bad spot where you might cut the wire. So we've already had a case of someone cutting the wire on the extruder or hot end side. So be careful. And once everything's done, a-okay. And in order to test the unit, we heat the nozzle to 50, making sure everything is working right But if around here it doesn't heat up, there's something wrong. You need to like disassemble the unit again. But in my case, it was heating up properly. So 250 might be a bit too much for PLA, but it's fine. So we press on E+ for the extruder filament to go in. And once you feed it in the filament, there should be filament oozing out. So if you've done the steps properly, the filament should be coming out. Now, if you're having issues with filament not going out, it means that A, your filament pathway is wrong, or B, your extruder tension is off. So in this case, we actually did a test print and the extruder tension was a bit too loose. So you can see gaps in my prints, which is okay. You know, it happens. But after which I adjusted the extruder tension, those little gaps right there you see on the screen is completely gone. So I did a test print with a Voron cube. Obviously, I didn't finish the print. My main point being is I wanted to see the same layers on the same height and no gaps here. So just make sure. All I did there was adjust the extruder tension. So something you can double check on. And on the next video, we'll be disassembling the Ace Pro. So very interesting buffer mechanism in this unit. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye. Hit that like and sub. Thanks.